The Eminence in Shadow, episode 2 from season 2, or episode 22 overall. This is The Haven. And we start off this issue with the White Demon. Anyone who doesn't remember, he's the one-armed dude in the previous episode. So we get a flashback of him where we see him with both arms, and he's just in his prime, and he's going around, he's slaughtering a bunch of people, and he just kind of talks about how killing is the only time like he really feels like alive, like he enjoys the thrill of the kill, and no one could touch him. And so he was going to go and attack the Red Tower when Crimson, the king of vampires, just easily beats him and slices off his arm and forces him to basically guard the tower now. And then we just get a repeat of the previous episode where we have Juggernaut and Yukimi fighting a bunch of ghouls and then fighting each other before Shadow arrives and kind of stops them. And of course we have Shadow repeating his same lines about, the moon is red, the frenzy has begun, yada yada yada. And Juggernaut and Yukimi basically just kind of like acknowledge him for a moment, and then Juggernaut smashes the door to the Red Tower and enters. And Yukimi basically tells Shadow, like, hey, I know that you saved some of my girls. Basically, she is the owner of like the brothel with all the prostitutes and stuff. And since Cid saved some of them in the previous episode, she's like, I hope we can remain in good relations. And then she leaves to go into the tower. And then Cid eventually follows after them. And the White Demon is watching all this, and he is like, well, there's no way I can touch the Juggernaut. And Yukimi is like way too strong as well. There's no way I can fight both of them. And then he sees Cid, and he's like, well, Cid has no powers. Like, he doesn't know who Cid is. He just knows the name Shadow. He's like, this Shadow guy has no powers whatsoever. Like, I can't read his power level. So he's got to be an easy target. And so, White Demon jumps at him, and Cid just easily cuts him down. Just slashes him to tiny bits and pieces. And once again repeats, the moon is red, the frenzy has begun, yada, yada, yada. And the White Demon, right before he dies, he's just like, what in the actual? And then he dies. And I was like, all right, sweet. Cid's like one of those where like he just gets a new toy and then he just can't put it down. That's what he's like with this new line. The moon is red, the frenzy has begun. Like, he loves that so much that he just repeats it over and over again. And so, they're in the tower now. Meanwhile, we cut to Beta, and Beta is also in the tower with a bunch of other Shadow Garden members, and they're basically going through the library. They're reading all the books and stuff. They believe that the possessed and the vampires share the same like affliction. That basically the same thing that caused the possessed also caused the vampires, and it's just there was a split. And within that split, one half became possessed, the other half became vampires. So they believe that if they can understand the vampire half, that maybe they can come up with the cure for good for the possessed. And so, she's trying to gather this information. Meanwhile, Claire and Mary literally tumble in, and they see Beta, and there's kind of just like a talk between the three. And Beta is like, she wants to attack Claire, but she won't because she knows that Claire is Cid's sister. Mary's just trying to make peace between them. She's like, these people aren't vampires, so there's no point in having a fight with them. Let's just focus on our task at hand. We gotta, stop the vampire queen, and we gotta save Cid. And that's when Rose, who is now number 666, shows up, and she starts freaking out because she has no idea that Cid and Shadow are the same people. Despite her being in Shadow Garden, she's still unaware of that information. And so she hears from Claire that Cid is kidnapped by the vampires and being used as a ritual, so she starts freaking out. And Beta has to basically tell her to calm down and to go back to her task. We cut to a little bit later where Mary and Claire are walking down the tower corridors and stuff. They come across a vampire. Mary cuts off his head while Claire stabs it in the heart. And basically, we find out that the only way to kill vampires in this universe is to destroy the heart. Cutting off the head doesn't do anything. You got to destroy the heart. And during this, Claire starts kind of asking Mary, like, what secret are you hiding? Beta kind of throws some lines out that seem a little bit suspicious about Mary. Basically saying, like, you've been hunting vampires for like 1,000 years or so. Like something in that regard. And Claire's like, you're not an elf. So why would they say that you were alive for so long? You're not an elf, so you don't have an elf's lifespan. Like, what's going on? What are you hiding? And Mary, like, refuses to explain. I'm pretty sure you can guess what Mary is. If not, I mean, you find out later in this episode. In fact, you can find out in just a moment, because we come across a moment where Juggernaut is just beating up a bunch of vampires and easily killing them. Claire and Mary are watching as he destroys like the second strongest vampire that's currently in the tower. So there's a vampire queen, but she's kind of dispatched right now. In fact, the leader right now of the vampires is Crimson. He's like the second strongest vampire. And the whole ritual is to bring back the queen. So the queen is the number one, obviously, but since she's dispatched, Crimson is now, he's number two, but he's now technically number one. And Juggernaut just like easily kills number three. And a bunch of other numbers. And then he sees Mary and Claire and he attacks them. And he easily, like, he punches Claire, bruises up her face. He slashes Mary across the torso and just obliterates her chest. And Claire tries to put up a fight when Mary basically apologizes to Claire and says, I need to take some of your blood. And then she kisses Claire and sucks some of the blood that's on Claire's bloody lips. And yeah, we find out that Mary is a vampire. She heals herself. She attacks Juggernaut, who's just easily blocking all of her attacks. And then he charges at her and he's going to slash the both of them. While Mary is strong, it's been so long since she's had blood that even just having a little bit of Claire's blood, the blood hasn't taken yet. So she's still pretty weak. And he's going to basically kill Mary and Claire in one slash when Cid shows up in his shadow guise and kicks Juggernaut out of the tower. And we have one of my favorite moments in this episode where he turns to Mary and Claire and then he delivers the moon is red, the frenzy has begun, we're running out of time. He basically the same lines that Mary gave to Cid, Cid's now using on Mary and Claire before he disappears. And I was just like, okay, that's just hilarious. He's basically using her own words against her. And the funny thing is she doesn't recognize them. I thought it would have been kind of funny if there was just a little bit of a recognition. She's like, hey, wait a second, that sounds pretty familiar. But no, so he disappears. And then we get Claire calling out Mary for being a vampire. And that's when Mary gives her whole backstory, her origin story. At first, vampires were vampires. They were top of the food chain. They were just slaughter humans, drink their blood. And then eventually the vampire weakness got out and humans discovered how you can kill vampires, what they're weak against. And so the humans captured a bunch of vampires and killed them and stuff. And then Elizabeth wanted to create a haven where vampires and humans can live in peace. And she basically gave up blood. And all the people under her, all the vampires under her, they gave up blood too. And they realized that after they went so long without blood, while they got weaker, they were also able to go out in the sun. And so they just live in peace with the humans. They farm, they eat regular food. Only Elizabeth is still affected. Because even though she has given up blood, she suffers, since she's the queen, she still suffers from bloodlust. And she still can't go out in the sun. And so she kind of tries to lock herself away so that she doesn't give in to her bloodlust. But one day she's given a drop of blood and she goes on a killing spree. And she slaughters all the humans and vampires for 3 days. 3 days and 3 nights straight. And after that, she decides that the best course of action would be to off herself. And Mary, who is Elizabeth's maid, her head maid, she tells Mary to scatter my ashes into the ocean so that I can never be formed again. And then she stabs herself in the heart. But rather than turning into ashes, she just kind of dies. She's just a dead body. So Mary's like, well, I can't do anything I can't scatter ashes because there's no ashes to scatter. So instead, she entombs Elizabeth, and she makes it her mission to protect the tomb. And that's when Crimson shows up and slices off Mary's head and says that because of your service to Elizabeth, I won't kill you this day. Maybe 1,000 years from now, when the red moon comes back, maybe you'll be willing to see which side you should truly belong. So he's basically like a vampire supremacist. And so Mary has made it her mission to stop Crimson and prevent Elizabeth from coming back, because Mary knows that Elizabeth doesn't want to come back and harm anyone again. And so that's when Claire reveals that she has shown signs of possession, and that's why she's so like gung-ho about saving Cid. Like, she wants to make sure that Cid's future is going to be well, like he's going to be well off in case she succumbs to possession and dies. And that's when we have the funniest moments, in my opinion, in this episode. We have like there's like sad music playing as Claire is talking about her backstory. Well, there's sad music when Mary gives her backstory, and then sad music when Claire gives her backstory. And then there's some kind of like a little bit of inspirational, still kind of sad and gloomy, like melancholy music when Mary's like, let's work together. Like, we both have the same goal. We have to stop Crimson from reviving Elizabeth. Mary basically holds out her hand. Claire is shaking it. And as they're shaking, Mary says, I will help you save your brother. And then Claire drops the greatest line in this entire episode. Well, she just like with a straight blank face says, I will do that myself with panache. So mind your own business, okay? And then the music cuts out. And Mary just kind of stares at her. And then we cut to Cid. And I'm just like, yes, the Brocon is strong in Claire. She doesn't want anyone else to save Cid but her, because only like she doesn't want any other woman to like show up Claire in front of her brother. Like, she has to be the one to save Cid. And I just love just the whole like, I'll do that myself with panache. I like how she has to throw in the with panache part. So mind your own business, okay? It's like they were having like this like friendly moment, and then Claire just completely throws it away because it's like, no, I'm going to be the one to save Cid. Speaking of Cid, that's when we cut to Cid, and he's in the treasure room, where there's just a bunch of like gold and treasure and stuff, and he's just going through all like the loot that the vampires have hoarded, and he's like, oh, there's like famous art pieces, and he's like, well, I already have a bunch of art pieces, so he just like tosses it, and then he comes up with like one. It's like a bunch of diamonds encrusted into this. It's like a bunch of jewels encrusted into this item. He's like, this looks kind of gaudy, and he just tosses it. And then he sees a chest just filled with a bunch of gold coins. This is like, just like Epsilon pads her chest with slime, I will pad my slime with coins. And so he uses the slime to gather up all the coins, and he's like, 1,000 coins, that's about 100 million Zelly. I plan to live at least 300 years, so this isn't enough for me to live on. And it's like, that's like the tuning him speaking about how he's gonna live for over 300 years. And then he's basically talking about how his act is getting old. His act of he's like, well, lately I've been showing up late when it comes to boss fights, and I think now it's time for me to do something different. So I'm gonna show up early. So now I'm gonna commence Operation Named Character Enters the Boss Room to find the boss fighting against mysterious person. Let's go. So basically, he wants to, rather than show up late during a boss fight, he's going to show up early, and he's going to fight the boss and destroy the boss just as the named characters arrived. And so we cut to Crimson, and Crimson is standing over the body of Elizabeth. And Elizabeth now is just nothing but bones. And all that's left of her is, other than her bones, is her heart, which kind of looks weird. It looks like this like mechanical flower that's kind of blossomed. It looks very much like an item from season 1, the flower item that was stolen from the school. Anyways, he takes that, And then he goes to the sacrifice, who Claire and Mary mistake as Cid, but it's not. It's just some other guy with black hair and black eyes. And he puts the hearts inside that guy's chest cavity. And basically, the ritual is going to allow Elizabeth to be reborn into this guy. And like the body will like morph into that of Elizabeth and stuff. And he's talking about how once Elizabeth is back, they're going to live in holy matrimony. But as he's saying this, Cid slips up behind him and drops an atomic and just obliterates him. Yeah, so Crimson is just killed in the middle of his monologue, not even realizing that Cid's behind him the entire time. And I was like, all right, that's just awesome. Like, Cid just silently shows up and drops an atomic. He doesn't even have to say anything. Like, he doesn't say, I am atomic or anything like that. He just does the atomic and just destroys the top half of the tower and just completely just obliterates Crimson. We just see Crimson's, like, burned head just, like, flying in the air as the episode ends. I'm just like, God damn it, Cid. God damn it, you're so awesome. So, yeah, there you go. That's how the episode ends. So, it was great. I freaking love Cid. I freaking love Claire and her just bro-con obsession. Like, just her whole, like, moment. Like, they're sharing a moment with Mary, and then she just completely destroys that by telling her to mind her own business. Cid silently dropping an atomic to destroy the big bad villain in one shot without him even realizing that Cid's behind him. Freaking, I love Cid. And not to mention the fact that Cid's tossing out the same goddamn line over and over again that Mary has given him. The whole, the moon is red, the frenzy has begun, we're running out of time, time is up. And the fact that he used it against Mary, it's just like, Jesus Christ, Cid. Oh, I freaking love you, dude. So yeah, this is an awesome episode. I freaking loved it. Such a great anime series. Well, I should say such a great light novel, which was adapted into an amazing manga. And the anime is just amazing as well, which is good. Because, you know, when it comes to anime adaptations, usually anime adaptations tend to be pretty good and pretty faithful. But you can always end up with something like Tokyo Ghoul, you know, where like the first episode's pretty good and then the second episode just completely falls off. Thankfully, that hasn't happened with Eminence and Shadow, at least not yet. I mean, we're only 2 episodes in, so anything can happen. But they've been 2 pretty damn good, faithful episodes. So yeah, there you go. There's Season 2, Episode 2, a.k.a. Episode 22 overall, The Haven. It was awesome. I loved it. Hope you enjoyed. Hope to see you next time. Take care. Later.